The stars hung silently in the black sky of space, 1,000 distant fires glowing like scattered dreams. On one of the largest space stations in the outer systems, a lone figure moved through the silver corridors. She was a woman of legends. Her skin shimmered faintly blue, her hair flowed like liquid night, and her eyes glowed with a strange mix of wisdom and power. Across galaxies, she was known as a warrior, a queen-to-be, a commander who had never known fear. Yet today, standing in the great crystal chamber, her chest tightened with a feeling she had never known before. In the center of the room was a human man, Eli. Unlike the soldiers and diplomats that was used to commanding, he was small, fragile, and entirely ordinary. He wore a simple tunic, his hair messy from the long journey through space, and his hands trembled slightly. Yet when looked at him, she did not see weakness. She saw honesty, courage, and a strange warmth that had no place in her cold galaxy. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the station's engines was the only sound, deep and steady like the heartbeat of some sleeping giant. Had come here expecting to see fear in the human. She had expected him to bow, to plead, or to run. None of that happened. Instead, he stood tall, meeting her gaze without flinching. And in that silence, something shifted. Then the words escaped her lips, trembling but fierce, echoing through the chamber. "What do I have to do to marry you, human?" The walls themselves seemed to pause at the question. Even the guards outside froze in shock, their weapons lowered as if gravity itself had changed. Across galaxies, she had commanded armies, conquered planets, and silenced rebellions. She had faced death countless times and never flinched. And yet she was unsure, for the first time in her life, of what to do next. Eli's heart leapt in his chest. He had not expected this. He had not even dreamed it. His lips parted, and after a long pause that felt like a lifetime, he spoke, his voice quiet but steady. "Come to Earth with me." The words were simple, but they carried weight beyond any throne or fleet had ever known. She stared at him, blinking, as if trying to understand the meaning. "Earth," she repeated, tasting the word like a forbidden fruit. She had seen countless worlds, walked on hundreds of planets, and yet this one human wanted her to leave everything behind and follow him there. Her mind raced. What would her people say? The empire she was meant to inherit, the fleets waiting for her orders, the crown she had trained her entire life to wear. And yet in that moment, all of that seemed small, distant, and meaningless. What mattered was the hand that reached for her, trembling, yet unafraid. What mattered was the courage of a human who could say the impossible and make it feel right. Slowly, almost unconsciously, stepped forward. Her blue-tinted skin brushed against the soft metal floor and her eyes held his. "Leave everything?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Eli nodded. "Everything, come with me, live, just live." And something in his chest, long frozen by duty and ambition, cracked open. She remembered laughter, sunlight, the gentle pulse of a world not defined by war or conquest. She remembered hope. And in that hope, she felt the pull of a life she had never dared to dream of before. The silence stretched again. Outside the chamber, the hum of the station continued, the stars watching in quiet judgment. Then, with a deep breath, let herself smile, a real smile, not the polite or commanding one she had always worn. "Then, I will go with you," she said. For the first time, the great warrior commander felt vulnerable. For the first time, she felt free. And as the stars outside shimmered like endless possibilities, the human and the alien stood together, two lives about to change the course of history. The galaxy could wait. Tonight, there was only this moment, fragile and brilliant, like the light of a single distant sun. Little did they know, the choice to follow their hearts would shake empires, spark wars, and challenge the very laws of the universe. But for now, there was only hope, and the beginning of something extraordinary had chosen to leave, yet the universe did not make such decisions easy. The moment she stepped into Eli's small ship, the empire erupted in fury. Her departure was seen not as a personal choice, but as betrayal. Alarms rang across star systems. Warships lifted off their docking bays, sending signals of pursuit and warning. The council of her people, once loyal, now called her a traitor. The same soldiers who had bowed to her commands now sought her capture. Eli sat at the controls, trying to steady the ship as alarms blared. Sweat ran down his temples, but he never took his eyes off. She stood in the narrow cabin, her glowing eyes scanning the control panels, her hands clenched as she fought her own storm of emotions. The weight of a crown she had not yet worn pressed on her shoulders, heavy and sharp. But heavier still was the thought of leaving her empire behind, the world she was born to lead, for a life she had never known. "Are you sure about this?" Eli asked, his voice trembling slightly, though determination shone through. "Once we leave, there's no turning back." Looked at him, she saw no fear in his eyes, only trust, and in that trust she found a strength she did not know she had. "I am sure," she said softly. "I've always fought for others, but never for myself. This is my choice. For the first time, it's mine." Their ship shot out of the station just as enemy warships appeared on the sensors, their weapons locking onto them with deadly precision. The hum of the engines was a faint comfort against the growing fear. Red warning lights bathed the cabin. Lasers streaked past, cutting brilliant lines across the void. Eli's hands shook as he maneuvered, but he held on. Moved beside him, not giving orders, not commanding, simply observing, understanding, and preparing to act if needed. The first chase lasted hours. Warships surrounded them, firing relentlessly. Some ships came so close that debris floated past the window. Realized then how fragile life could be, even for those who commanded entire armies. She had faced death many times before, yet none had felt as terrifying as leaving everything she knew for a human she barely understood. And yet there was a strange joy in the risk, a thrill that no victory in battle had ever given her. She laughed once, a sound like music, startling Eli. "Do humans always face danger like this?" she asked. "Sometimes," Eli said, gripping the controls harder. "Sometimes we run from it. Sometimes we fight it, but we never let it decide our hearts." For the first time, realized that humans had something her people often lacked. Resilience that came not from power, but from choice. They fought not because they were forced to, but because they wanted to live and live well. Hours turned into a long journey across the outer rim. Eventually, they found a small pocket of space where the warships could not follow. The alarms quieted. The red lights faded. Silence returned, except for the hum of the engines and the steady breathing of the two souls who had left everything behind. Sank into a corner of the ship, exhausted but alive. Her hand brushed the edge of a small window, staring at the stars like she had never seen them before. "I thought power would be enough," she murmured. "I thought strength could protect me from everything, but I was wrong. Only this choice, this human, can make me feel alive." Eli knelt beside her. "And you are not alone anymore. Whatever comes, we face it together." A faint smile appeared on his lips. For the first time in her life, she did not feel the burden of a throne or the weight of expectation. She felt only the warmth of trust, of hope, and of something fragile yet infinitely stronger than any empire she had known. Somewhere in the distance, the Empire's alarms continued to echo, a reminder that the galaxy had not forgiven her. But in that small human ship, she felt an unfamiliar and wonderful freedom. Freedom to love, freedom to live, freedom to choose. And as the stars stretched endlessly before them, knew that no crown, no fleet, no empire could ever be worth more than the choice she had made in a single heartbeat. To leave it all for a human who had shown her the meaning of life. The ship shuddered as it pierced Earth's atmosphere, flames licking along its outer panels. Below, the humans waited. Not the humans they had come to know in Eli's stories, but armed, cautious, and filled with fear. Earth did not greet them with open arms. It greeted them with guns, suspicion, and the cold metal of jets forming circles in the sky. His glowing eyes widened as she looked down at the planet she had never seen, a world small and fragile compared to the stars. Blue oceans stretched between green lands, Clouds drifted lazily over mountains and rivers sparkled like silver threads. It was beautiful. It was peaceful. And yet, humanity had trained itself to fear the unknown. The first soldiers arrived, pointing weapons at the descending ship. Eli stood beside the controls, shouting through the comm system, trying to explain that meant no harm. But words, no matter how carefully spoken, could not reach the hearts of men who had never seen an alien before. Stepped forward herself, moving slowly, hands open. She had been a queen to be, a commander of fleets, a warrior unmatched in skill, yet here she was, defenseless before a world she did not know. "I come in peace," she said, her voice steady but gentle. Her tone carried across loudspeakers, echoing over the landing field. "I only seek life. I only wish to live." The soldiers hesitated, their weapons lowered just slightly. Curiosity mingled with fear. They had read reports of her before, tales of battles, wars, and entire planets trembling under her command. Could such a being truly seek only peace? Eli watched her, heart tight in his chest. He had promised a new life, and this was the first test. The fear and mistrust of an entire species pressed down upon them like a weight. "They might never accept you," he whispered. "Not today, not tomorrow." Met his gaze, and in that moment Eli understood something he had not before. She did not fear humans, she understood them, and understanding was far stronger than fear. "Then I will wait," she said softly. "I will show them who I am, not what they expect me to be." The first night on Earth was quiet but tense. Scientists and military officials monitored constantly, their eyes unblinking, their questions endless. She sat in a white, sterile room, staring at the walls, feeling the hum of machines and the quiet pulse of a world that had no place for her yet. Eli sat beside her, exhausted but determined, holding her hand in a silent promise. A small voice broke the tension hours later. A child, no more than 8, had slipped past security and stood in the doorway. The child's eyes were wide with wonder, not fear. "Are you really dangerous?" the little one asked. Knelt to meet the child's gaze. "I was a warrior," she said, choosing her words carefully. "I have fought battles and I have led armies, but I am not here to hurt anyone. I am here to live just like you." The child smiled, and it was the first true smile had seen since leaving her empire. That simple moment, small and quiet, carried more weight than 100 battleships or 1,000 soldiers. It was the first bridge between her world and theirs. Over the next days endured endless examinations, questions, and judgment. She walked corridors under watchful eyes, ate food prepared for observation, and slept in sterile quarters. She learned human habits, laughter, and fear. And through it all, Eli never left her side, offering reassurance, warmth, and a reminder of why she had chosen this life. One evening they stood together by a window, watching the sun dip behind the city skyline. Hands rested against the glass. "I have left everything behind," she whispered. "My crown, my ships, my people, and still, they do not trust me." Eli placed a hand on her shoulder. "Trust is not given, it is earned," he said. "And you have time, you have us. That is more than any empire could offer." For the first time since leaving the stars, felt a spark of hope that was not born from power, not from fear, not from strategy, but from human hearts. It was fragile, yes, and Earth was not yet ready to embrace her fully, but it was enough. And as the city lights flickered below, the alien queen-to-be understood that this was only the beginning. To survive here, she would need patience, courage, and the one thing her empire could never have given her: love. Peace on Earth was fragile, like a candle flickering in the wind. Had begun to adjust to human life, learning their ways, understanding their fears, and feeling a connection she had never known among stars and armies. But the universe does not forgive choices that break empires. One night the sky over Earth ignited with red light. At first it looked like a strange aurora, beautiful yet ominous. Then the sensors on human satellites screamed alarms. Massive alien warships, the kind had once commanded, now appeared above the planet. Their engines burned like molten fire, cutting through the night. The Empire had come for her. Panic swept across cities. Emergency broadcasts filled homes. Sirens rang and people ran through streets, unsure if this was invasion or apocalypse. Humans had never faced an enemy like this. Jets scrambled, missiles launched, but the fleet above was too vast, too powerful, and familiar with the technology humans barely understood. Stood on the observation deck of the command center with Eli. Her glowing eyes reflected the crimson light outside. For the first time, she felt fear, not for herself, but for the fragile world she had chosen. "They will destroy everything," she said quietly. "I left them behind and now they've come for us." Eli held her hand tightly. "Then we'll fight, together. We may not be strong like they are, but we have something they don't." Looked at him, a flicker of hope returning. "What is that?" "Earth," Eli said. "The humans, their courage, their stubbornness. They fight for each other. And that is stronger than any fleet, stronger than any empire." The first wave of attacks began hours later. Alien ships descended like dark mountains, firing energy beams that turned buildings to rubble. The human response was small, underprepared, but relentless. Fighter jets dodged, missiles launched, and soldiers on the ground did their best to protect civilians. Chaos ruled the cities. Smoke and fire rose like terrible clouds, painting the sky red. Stood among the human commanders, offering guidance. She did not command them as a queen or a general. She guided them as a teacher, showing where the enemy was weak, where the humans could hold ground, and how to use clever tactics instead of raw power. Her knowledge saved countless lives, but still, each day felt like a test of endurance. Eli worked tirelessly, coordinating defenses, repairing ships, and comforting those who were afraid. He watched with admiration and love, seeing the alien warrior who had left empires behind to fight alongside humans, not above them. One evening, after a brutal day of battle, and Eli stood on a hill overlooking a city ravaged by the attacks. Fires still burned, smoke curled into the sky, and distant explosions shook the ground. Hands rested on Eli's shoulder. Her voice was soft but steady. "I thought leaving the Empire would bring freedom, but freedom is never simple. Every choice has a cost." Eli wrapped his arm around her. "It is worth it," he said. "We are alive, we are together. That is more than they can ever take from us." His eyes shimmered with unshed tears. She had once believed strength meant fleets, armies, and power. Now she knew true strength came from sacrifice, trust, and love. She had given up a throne, faced betrayal, and survived the galaxy's fury. And she was still here, standing beside a human who believed in her, fighting not for glory but for life itself. The Empire's ships loomed closer, preparing for the final wave. Humanity's defenses were fragile, but their spirit burned brighter than any weapon. Took a deep breath. "Then we fight," she said, "for Earth, for life, for choice." And in the red sky above, the first human ships launched their daring counterattack. Small, slow, fragile compared to the alien fleet, yet full of courage that could not be measured in firepower alone. And Eli watched together as humanity stood to face a galaxy's wrath. For the first time, felt hope that was not born from conquest, but from something far stronger. The will to survive, the bond between human hearts, and the choice to protect what mattered most. The battle for Earth was far from over. The alien empire's ships blotted out the stars, their massive shadows casting fear across the planet. Cities had been damaged, and human defenses seemed almost laughable compared to the might of the invaders. Yet in the face of impossible odds, humans began to rise. Factories once quiet and ordinary transformed overnight into assembly lines for weaponry. Engineers, mechanics, and scientists worked side by side with soldiers, turning small ships and ground vehicles into powerful tools of resistance. Humanity had never faced an enemy like this, and they had never been forced to innovate so quickly. Watched in awe as humans, creatures she had once thought fragile, began to adapt. Their creativity, their resilience, and their courage amazed her. She had led fleets that could destroy worlds, Yet these humans, who had never traveled beyond their small blue planet, were willing to fight not for glory, not for empire, but for survival, for family, for love. Eli worked tirelessly beside her. He taught the humans how to use some of his technology, how to blend human ingenuity with alien design. The ship's control panels, once complex and alien, were for Earth pilots who practiced tirelessly, day and night. Eli's confidence was contagious, inspiring soldiers to believe they could stand against an empire that had conquered countless worlds. Trained humans herself, not as a commander but as a teacher. She demonstrated tactics, explained enemy weaknesses, and shared knowledge of fleet formations and energy weaponry. But she did not demand obedience. She encouraged choice. Every human she trained began to understand that they were capable of more than they had ever imagined. In the evenings, when the battles paused and smoke cleared from the skis, and Eli would sit together on a hill overlooking a damaged city. Fires still burned in the distance, but the people moved with determination, rebuilding and preparing for the next strike. Hands rested on Eli's shoulder as she watched the humans work. "They are incredible," she whispered. "I have never seen anything like this. My empire would have crushed them, controlled them, but here they fight for themselves, and they are strong." Eli smiled. "Humans survive because they refuse to give up. That is strength you cannot measure in fleets or weapons." Over time, humans began to launch small strikes against the alien ships. At first, they lost. Ships exploded in fireballs, pilots fell, and despair threatened to overwhelm hope. But each defeat taught them something new. Each mistake was studied, adjusted, and improved. Every human who fell inspired two more to rise. Felt her heart swell with admiration and pride. These humans, whom she had once feared would crumble under pressure, were becoming something extraordinary. They were not gods, not warriors born of distant planets. They were ordinary beings doing the impossible. They were fighting with heart, courage, and intelligence beyond measure. Eli stood beside her as a squadron of human pilots prepared for their first coordinated attack on the alien fleet. "Today they learn," he said quietly. "Today they show what it means to fight for their home." The attack began, small but precise. Missiles streaked through the sky, ships darted and maneuvered, and for the first time the alien fleet faltered. Instructions guided the humans like a beacon. She did not fire weapons herself, but her presence, her knowledge, and her belief in them became a force stronger than any weapon. As the humans returned from their mission, battered but victorious, looked at Eli. "I thought strength was power," she said softly. "I was wrong. Strength is courage, and courage grows from hope." Eli took her hand in his. "And hope is something humans never run out of. That is why we can fight even when the odds are against us." For the first time, believed that Earth could survive. Not because of weapons or fleets or her own strength, but because humans were willing to become more than anyone ever imagined. They were willing to fight for life, for each other, and for the freedom to choose. And in that belief, felt something she had never felt among stars and empires: peace. A fragile peace born from struggle, courage, and love. The galaxy could throw anything at them, but she knew one thing with certainty: humans would rise, they would fight, and they would not fail. The galaxy's wrath came like a storm. The alien empire, humiliated by the resilience of humans, prepared its ultimate weapon, a massive world-destroying core aimed directly at Earth. Had once helped design this weapon, approving its construction in her youth. Now, the same device that could annihilate billions of humans loomed over the world she had chosen to protect. In the command center, alarms screamed. Screens flashed warnings of the approaching core. Military leaders argued frantically, unsure how to stop it. Humanity, for all its courage and ingenuity, faced annihilation. Stood at the center, her glowing blue eyes reflecting the red warning lights. She understood the technology, the dangers, and the enemy's plans. But the task required one thing: someone would have to enter the core and shut it down manually. Eli stepped forward without hesitation. His voice was steady. "I'll do it, I can." His hand shot out, grabbing his arm. Her grip was firm, desperate. "No, I built it, I know it, this is my burden." Her voice cracked for the first time in weeks, revealing the fear she had hidden behind courage and wisdom. "You are human. You have lived, you have fought, and you deserve life. I cannot let you die here." Eli's eyes shone with determination, but he did not argue. He understood her choice, even if it frightened him. "Then I will stay with hope," he said quietly. "And you will carry us all." Suited up, entering the core alone. The massive chamber of metal and energy hummed with deadly power. Security protocols tried to block her access, automated defenses activated, and she had to fight through systems she once controlled effortlessly. Every step forward was a battle, not against soldiers, but against machines, alarms, and the sheer destructive force she had once unleashed. She moved with precision, cutting through barriers and navigating corridors that had once been familiar. Her hands trembled only once when she saw the energy core itself, a glowing, pulsing heart capable of erasing a planet. She took a deep breath, grounding herself. This was not about power or glory. This was about life, human life, her life, and the life she had chosen to protect. Outside, Eli and the human fleet engaged the Empire's final forces. Ships exploded in brilliant fireballs. Pilots cried out in fear and hope, navigating impossible odds. Humanity had become something extraordinary, but the fate of their world still depended on. Inside the core, she reached the control console. She knew the sequence, the codes, the timing, but one mistake could end everything. She worked quickly, shutting down energy flows, bypassing security protocols, and dismantling the weapon's core from the inside. Alarms screamed, metal groaned, and the chamber shook violently. Then a final pulse of energy surged toward her, braced herself, using every ounce of strength and willpower. She tore through the final barriers with her hands, ripping apart the control matrix. The energy core erupted, sending a shockwave across the void. The fleet of the Empire, now without control or guidance, collapsed. Ships collided, systems failed, and the massive weapon disintegrated into fragments that burned like meteors. In the chaos, activated her escape pod. It ejected from the remains of the core just in time. The pod drifted silently through space, battered but intact. Eli watched from the command center, heart pounding, as the explosion lit the stars like fire and hope combined. Minutes felt like hours. Then out of the smoke and debris, the pod emerged. Was alive. Her body was battered, her armor scorched, but her eyes still glowed with the fierce determination that had saved an entire planet. Eli ran to her as she stepped from the pod, wrapping his arms around her. Tears ran down both their faces, not from relief alone, but from the weight of everything they had endured. She had faced her past, the Empire and death itself, and had returned to them alive. The alien fleet scattered, retreating in confusion and defeat. The galaxy had witnessed the fall of an empire, not by the strength of one human or one alien, but by courage, hope, and the choice to fight for what truly mattered. Once a queen-to-be of a vast empire, now stood among humans as a protector, a teacher, and a hero. She had given up everything, faced impossible odds, and survived, not because she commanded fleets, but because she chose life, love, and courage over power. And Eli by her side realized that sometimes the strongest weapon in the galaxy was not firepower or strategy. It was the heart willing to fight for others, no matter the cost. Years had passed since the Empire had fallen. The scars of war remained on Earth, cities rebuilt, forests, oceans still carrying whispers of fire. But humanity had survived, stronger than ever. Walked among them, no longer as a queen-to-be of distant worlds, but as one of them. Her glowing blue eyes had dimmed to a softer light, her once imposing armor replaced with simple clothes, her every step grounded in a life she had chosen rather than inherited. Eli had built a small home by the ocean, a place of quiet peace far from the chaos of the stars. Every morning the sun rose over the horizon, reflecting in the water, and every evening it set in colors that made pause in wonder. She had seen countless worlds, countless suns, but none had touched her heart like this one. She had left empires, warships, and crowns behind for a human life, and now she understood the full weight of that choice. One afternoon, as the wind carried the scent of salt and the laughter of children from a nearby village, and Eli walked along the shore. Their hands brushed together, fingers intertwining naturally. They spoke little, for words were unnecessary in these moments of quiet contentment. But beneath the peace lay a current of memory, of battles fought, of friends lost, of fear turned into courage. Stopped and looked at Eli. Her eyes held a vulnerability she rarely allowed anyone to see. "Do you remember the first time I asked you what I had to do to marry you?" she said softly, almost a whisper against the sound of waves. Eli smiled, a warmth in his eyes that made her heart beat faster than any starship chase ever had. "I do, and I said, 'Come to Earth with me.'" Laughed quietly, a sound filled with relief, joy, and love. "I never imagined leaving an empire would bring me here. I never imagined I would find a life like this." "Neither did I," Eli admitted. "But you did, you chose it, and you chose me." For a long moment they stood together, watching the horizon. The ocean reflected the colors of the sky, and in that reflection, saw herself not as a warrior or a queen, but as someone who had loved, risked, and survived. She had faced the galaxy's wrath, torn apart empires, and survived the ultimate weapon. And yet, this small human life, these simple moments, felt far more precious than anything she had ever known. Knelt, taking Eli's hands into her own. Her voice trembled, but not from fear. "Eli, what I have left in this life, I want it to be ours. Will you truly have me as your partner, not a queen, not a commander, but as someone who loves you?" Eli's eyes shone with tears of joy. He knelt beside her, gripping her hands firmly. "You already have me," he said. "You always have, and I choose you every day and every moment, not because of who you were, but because of who you are, here now with me." The waves crashed gently at their feet, as if applauding the courage it had taken for an alien queen to choose a human life. His heart swelled with a feeling she had once thought impossible: belonging. She belonged here, to Earth, to Eli, to a life she had fought so hard to protect. And in that moment the galaxy seemed distant and unimportant. The wars, the fleets, the empire, all of it faded into memory. What remained was love, choice, and the quiet beauty of living. Leaned into Eli, resting her head against his shoulder. "Then, I am yours," she whispered, not as a queen commanding obedience, but as a partner offering her heart. "And I am yours," Eli replied, holding her close. "Always." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of gold and crimson. Above them, stars began to appear, twinkling in silent celebration. For the first time, understood that the greatest battles were not fought in space or with weapons, but in the heart. And the greatest victory was not power, but love. Together, human and alien, they watched the waves, feeling the pulse of a world that had given them both life, hope, and a future. The galaxy had tested them, but Earth had given them peace. And in that peace, an Eli finally found home.